Hello my friend, with home studio hardware equipment being more accessible and cheaper than ever, with a seemingly endless stream of high quality plugins at our disposal, and with a constant stream of home studio information, why is it that home studio productions are getting worse? Let's dive straight in. So I mentioned plugins at the start, and it seems like an obvious place to start because I think you're going to be aware, if you're into home studio production, that you're going to get marketed plugins pretty quickly. If you get onto the net, if you get onto YouTube, pretty soon you're going to see an abundance of very potent marketing for the latest or more established plugins, and you're going to feel like, look, I need to invest in these if I'm going to start getting pro results. Now, I'm not here to bash plugins or plugin manufacturers. I'm in a privileged position where I've got a whole bunch of plugins at my disposal because I've reviewed a whole lot of plugins on this channel, and so many of them are great. And in fact, a lot of the analog style plugins which I've reviewed and used over the last few years have really helped me and assisted my workflow method. And a whole bunch of one knob plugins which I've been reviewing recently which sound awesome and do great things, but you can hear I'm already getting carried away. Now here's the thing. If you go back to working with any pros in a studio environment, they're not going to start getting out every single microphone for the drawer. They're not going to start getting all the different hardware in their collection or opening out shelves and drawers of loads and loads of equipment. They're either going to have a template which they work with in the box, using the same plugins which are tried and tested that they trust and they know the sounds of, or if they're working with hardware, or you're going back in the day, you were going in to a console based studio, there'd simply be certain pieces of hardware which the producer or the mixer would use every single time on every single mix. So what's the problem? Well, put simply, too much choice leads to too much confusion, typically will lead to a messy mix and no mix method, and you're going to end up spending more time chasing your tail looking after the latest plugin than you are actually perfecting and understanding how to use the equipment that you've already got. And there really in lies the problem. Constantly chasing the latest thing, I think no matter what creative industry you're in, typically leads you down a bit of a garden path. In essence, I think it's good practice to master the equipment or plugins that you have to help you and aid you to improve your skill set and your productions and your mixes before you start thinking about investing in the latest gear or plugins. Number 2 is working alone, and I know a lot of people are going to be working on their own from the home studios, and I enjoy working on my own. I'm autistic, so that shouldn't come as a huge surprise, but what I have found in the past when I do collaborate and work with other people, that it definitely brings something different out. Definitely in the music, and it pushes the music forward. I think always working on your own can, one, be quite a lonely experience, but often it can feel quite frustrating because it's other people and working with other people that can challenge you or show you things firsthand. I was lucky enough to learn a lot simply by shadowing someone else working in a studio, which was far easier than trying to unpick my way through tens or hundreds of different YouTube tutorial videos. Working solely with somebody else and seeing their practice is such a great way to learn. And if you want to work with me, I've got an awesome free course called the Virtual Console, so you can shadow me mixing. I'll take you through the key steps of mixing from your home studio in language that you can understand. You'll find the link for that free course just below this video. And that takes me nicely on to number 3, mixing. Mixing slash patience. There's so much focus these days on mixing. I actually find that quite overwhelming. I certainly did when I started doing real home studio. I kind of expected to be making a lot of content with a real balance of topics, but I found over the years of doing lots of polls and asking my audience what they're really interested in, most of the time, in fact I think pretty much all the time, mixing comes out on top. And I get it. Mixing's really fun, it's really interesting, and it's where a lot of the focus of plugin marketing is, and equipment is often down in the mixing area. But if you go into a pro studio or you work with a pro, the focus is very much on the craft of the song, the arrangement of the song, then the quality of the recording, and then the editing. All of these things before you even start mixing, which I do feel is getting somewhat overlooked by the overwhelming interest and want to get to that mixing process. And I think maybe that comes back down to patience. More and more we want everything so quick. It's not our fault. It's how the industry has moved. It's how technology has moved. It's how lifestyle has moved. It's how everything's being sold on social media that needs to be done right now and today. And is that going to be finished in 2 hours? And what do you mean you haven't finished tracking it? It's taken you a whole week. The pro approach is to have a lot of emphasis right from that songwriting and arrangement onto the recording, and then indeed onto the editing, which is, yes, a lot more boring than doing mixing. But the point is, if you do your editing well, the mix kind of takes care of itself. If you do those foundation things right early on, your mix is going to be so much more satisfying and have such a better result. That's the reason why pros put a lot of emphasis and put the time into those early building blocks, because if you get those right, the mixing process is not only going to be more rewarding, it's going to be more fun, it's going to sound a whole load better. Number 4 is information, or too much information. We are not short of channels, much like my channel, teaching home studio techniques, production, talking about equipment, talking about gear, and just talking about home studio lifestyle. And that's great. I dig those channels too, and I check them out a lot too. But if you're learning, there is that old proverb that too many cooks spoil the broth. And what I definitely recommend is tuning into someone who you really feel connected with. You enjoy the way they either mix or they work. You like their ethos. You just like their vibe. That might be me. It might be someone else. But if you like someone and the way they teach and that speaks to you, then I would definitely recommend working with them, doing some of their free stuff, taking that free course if you like the way I teach, and then checking out their courses after that, rather than having 50 different YouTube channels where you're learning a little bit from each. Why? Because you're going to find conflicting information. Why are you going to find conflicting information? Because music production and music isn't kind of some perfect maths. It's often in the ear of the beholder. Approach can be in the ear of the beholder. Some people like to approach things in different ways. Some people like to just mix on headphones. Some people much prefer mixing on monitors. Some people mix on a laptop on a plane. That would be my absolute worst nightmare. Some people like using a desktop. There's so many different approaches. Some people like using 4 tracks or 8 tracks. My point is, if you're starting out or if you're at an intermediate level and you want to up your game, but you're listening to a load of conflicting information, you're just going to end up burning out. So find someone that you dig, that you really like how they teach, and you feel that you can learn from, and stick with them. And finally, number 5, the death of demos. Now, when I used to work from home, like on a 4-track cassette recorder, you'd put together a demo and then maybe do another demo. And then one of my friends had an 8-track, so often we get together and do the band demo on the 8-track, and then eventually we take it into a 24-track studio. So the song, even at our level, which was pretty humble level of working in our, say, a home studio back then, it was a Tascam 4-track and a mic, but we'd take the song through a process of the initial writing, which might go down even before the 4-track, onto just a cassette recorder, just live, and then we'd break it down into those 4 tracks, maybe do a bounce. Then we get a bit more sophisticated with the 8-track, and then start to get an idea of where the tracks should sit and how the song's going to work. Then by the time we got to spend money and go to the 24-track studio, we've got a good idea of what tracks are going to go down. Not just that we're efficient and we don't waste money, but also that by that point, we know what makes the song tick, so we're not just going to be wasting our time and going crazy. Now, the problem I think with DAWs often is you'll start to work on a track and you'll maybe put down some drums and you're building the song and building, and what you tend to do is add and remove tracks in the file and just slowly building and building till you get to a point where you're happy. And at the same time, you're probably going to be mixing it a little bit and you're going to be sculpting the song as one is working, but you're always working within the same file rather than that's the demo done. Let's put it away, let's start afresh. It tends to just kind of be an amalgamation and a growth process, which I think always isn't necessarily the best thing for song progression and arrangement. I guess the way around this would be to get a small 4-track recorder and just record away from your studio and get more into that demo process. The reason I like working with demos is it just gives the song a chance to breathe. It gives you a chance to get used to that song and hear the things that aren't quite working. And it's all that area which, if we're impatient and we just rush straight to the mix process, by the time you've ended the mix process and you got the thing, you'll look back and go, that doesn't work. That needs a different intro, or well, why have I not noticed that verse is not right, or I should have worked the chorus, or just got the structure wrong. And that's the whole thing of that demo process. That's the value of being patient, and that the song may well take a few months before, or longer, before it's ready to actually commit it down into your DAW. So that's 5 reasons why I think home studio productions could well be getting worse. What do you think about those? Have you got ones to add? Let me know in the comments box below. I love hearing from you. Whilst you're there, don't forget to grab that free mixing course, the Virtual Console. Of course, don't forget to like and subscribe here on YouTube. And if you enjoyed this video today, you're definitely going to want to check this next one out.